the village, only a few steps away. The road had been quiet for so long that the traveler had stopped expecting anything to change. It was one of those nights when the world felt emptied of hurry. The sky was dark and smooth, with no sharp wind, no restless movement in the trees. Just a deep, steady stillness that wrapped around the car and followed it like a soft shadow. His headlights carved in gentle through the forest. The beams fell on damp asphalt, on pale mist drifting low near the ground, on the edges of tall pines whose needles held tiny drops of moisture that caught the light and disappeared again every now and then. The road reflected a thin shimmer leftover water from the day, gathered in shallow places, calm and unmoving. Inside the car, the air was warm. The heater breathed softly, not loud enough to be distracting, just enough to keep the chill outside from becoming a problem. The dashboard lights were dimmed low. The radio was off. He wanted the quiet. He wanted the kind of silence that could hold his thoughts without throwing back at him. He kept both hands on the wheel, relaxed, steady. It wasn't a long trip, not exactly. But it felt longer. The forest seemed to repeat itself endlessly, tree after tree, shadow after shadow, the same gentle curves, the same mild rise and fall of the road. It was peaceful in a way that felt almost unreal, like being carried forward on a slow river. He had been driving because he needed space, not the kind of space people talk about in bright daytime conversations, but real space, dark, quiet space, where no one asked questions, where no messages arrived, where he could breathe without explaining why. The reason that need was simple. His grandmother had on his mind lately, not in the heavy way that makes you feel trapped, but in a tender way, like a small light in the corner of a room that you keep noticing. She had said something earlier that week, something she hadn't meant to make important. She had been sitting in her familiar chair, a soft blanket over her knees, her hands resting calmly on top of it. The TV had been on, but turned low, a program about gardens that she wasn't really watching. She looked at him with gentle steadiness she always carried, and she said, almost casually, I had about him. She didn't have to say who. He knew immediately. Grandfather, the man he barely remembered, the man who had been talked about in the house like a warm presence that had stepped out for a moment and would return any day. The man whose name was softly, not because forbidden, because it carried something delicate. His grandmother didn't explain further that evening. She just smiled a little, as if the dream had left a pleasant feeling in her chest. And then she asked him if he wanted tea. They made tea. They talked about small things. But later, when he was alone, the words stayed with him. I had a dream about him. It wasn't sadness that followed those words. It was curiosity. The quiet state of wanting to understand something that had never been clearly explained, because in their family, the story of the grandfather was always unfinished. People said, he left long ago. They said it gently, as if the words were fragile. No one argued about it. No one blamed. No naive details. It was simply a fact that had settled into the family, dust steadily on an old photograph, soft, inevitable, unspoken. And yet, sometimes, when his grandmother thought no one was listening, she would speak of him as if he were still close. She would mention a habit of his, a phrase he used, a way he looked at the morning light. She would laugh at something he once said. She would say his name with a warmth that didn't feel like the past. The traveler had grown up with those moments, and now, as he drove through the forest, the memory of her voice, quiet and steady, felt like it was sitting beside him in the passenger seat. The road turned gently left, then right. The forest opened slightly, revealing a darker space between the trees, like a corridor of shadow. The headlights reached into it, then moved on. A low fog drifted in slow layers, as if the night itself was breathing. He blinked slowly, not tired exactly, but calm. And then, without warning, the car's forward path changed, not because the road ended, because something was there, a shape across the asphalt. At first, it looked like a fallen branch. Then, as he slowed, it became clear it was larger, something heavy, laid across the road with the careless certainty of nature. A tree limb, thick and dark, with smaller branches reaching out like quiet fingers. It wasn't enormous, but it was wide enough to make driving around it impossible without risking the ditch. He eased the car to a stop. The engine idled softly. The headlights brightened the fallen wood. The forest around him remained still. For a moment, he simply sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, listening. No cars, voices, no wind strong enough to move the branches. Only the low hum of the engine and the faint hiss of the heater. He could have turned it around. It would have been easy in a practical sense. He could have driven back to the main road, returned home. No one would know. No one would care. But something in him didn't move toward that decision. Instead, he sighed gently, unbuckled his seatbelt, and opened the door. Cold flowed in like a quiet wave. He stepped out and closed the door softly behind him, as if he didn't want to disturb the forest. His shoes met damp ground. The air smelled of wet pine bark and earth and the faint mineral scent that comes when fog sits close to the ground. He walked the fallen branch up close. It was rough and dark, its bark softened by moisture. He placed a hand on it. Heavy. He tried to lift one end, but it barely shifted. Not impossible, but not easy alone. He straightened slowly and looked around. The forest pressed in, both sides of the road, tall trunks rising into darkness. The fog, the distance feel close, as if the world ended a few meters away. And then he noticed something he hadn't seen from the car. A sign, just off the roadside, partly hidden by low brush and mist, stood an old wooden signpost. It leaned slightly, as if it had been there for a long time. The paint was faded. The edges were worn. Yet the letters were still readable, pale against dark wood. He's closer. The sign had two boards. One pointed back the way he had come, though it didn't name anything. The other pointed deeper into the forest, and on it, written in calm, simple lettering, was the name of a place, a village name. Beneath it, another line, 150 meters. He stared at it for a few seconds. Here, it didn't feel impossible. There were many small places in Forest's old settlements, quiet hamlets, communities that didn't appear in bright travel brochures. And 150 meters wasn't far. He turned his head slightly, looking in the direction the sign pointed. At first, he saw only darkness and fog, then saw a narrow path. Not a road for cars, more like a small lane, packed earth and stones, leading away from the asphalt and into the trees. The lane was just wide enough for a person to walk comfortably. It looked used, not abandoned. The fog above it seemed thinner, as if warm air had moved through recently. He considered a fallen branch behind him. He considered the path ahead. The decision, strangely easy. He reached back into the car, grabbed his jacket, and put it on. Then he clicked his phone screen on, mostly out of habit. No signal. The little icon showed nothing. He didn't feel worried. He felt quiet, as if the forest had already decided this for him. He locked the car with a gentle press of the key fob. The lights blinked once. Then the forest swallowed the sound. He stepped onto the narrow lane. The air immediately different. Not warmer exactly, but softer, less sharp. The fog here was not thick and wet. It was thin and drifting, like breath on cold glass. The trees stood tall and calm, their trunks dark. Somewhere above, a night bird called once, then fell silent again. Slowly, his footsteps made a faint sound on damp stones. He could hear the quiet crunch of gravel under his shoes. He could hear his own breathing steady, unhurried. The path curved gently, as if guiding him rather than challenging him. And then, before he had counted even 100 steps, he saw a light, a warm glow, low and steady, like a lantern seen through mist. Then another, then another. Thinned, opened, and appeared. It wasn't large. It was kind of village that felt it belonged to older times, though nothing about it looked broken or abandoned. The houses were small, built from wood and stone, their roofs dark and sloped. Soft yellow light glowed behind curtains. Smoke rose lazily from a few chimneys, drifting upward and blending with the mist. A narrow street ran through the center, paved with uneven stones. Lanterns hung from wooden posts, each lantern surrounded by a small halo of warm light. The entire place felt quiet in the best way. Silent, peaceful. He stepped forward, and the stones under his feet became more regular. The air smelled faintly of burning wood, of tea, of something sweet and baked. Somewhere a door opened and closed gently, not loudly, just the soft sound of a home being lived in. He looked around, surprised by how calm he felt. The village did not feel like a secret. It felt like a place that had been waiting without impatience. He walked slowly along the street, passing a small bench near a lantern post. A cat sat on the bench, curled like a comma, eyes half closed. It opened one eye, regarded him calmly, and then closed again, as if deciding he was not a problem. He passed a low fence with climbing vines, the leaves damp and shining faintly. He passed a tiny garden patch where winter herbs still held their scent. Past windows where he could see silhouettes moving slowly inside, someone setting a cup down, someone adjusting a curtain. No rushed. No one seemed. He was there. The traveler felt an odd sense that time here moved differently. Not in a magical way, not in a way he would have described out loud, but in a simple way. People were not fighting the night. They were allowing it to be what it was. At the center of stood a small square, not grand, just open space, surrounded by a few buildings that seemed older than the others. One of them looked like a small wooden sign, warm light, a steady glow through the windows. Another building looked like a tiny shop, closed for the night, and there, near the edge of the square, stood an older man. He was standing beneath a lantern, hands tucked calmly into the pockets of a coat that looked worn but cared for. The lantern light touched his face gently, revealing lines that were not harsh but lived in. His hair was gray, but not thin, combed back neatly. His posture was relaxed, as if he had been standing there for a while, not waiting anxiously, just present. The slowed. Something in his chest tightened, not with fear, but with sudden recognition that didn't come from logic. The older looked up. The met and traveler stopped completely because was familiar, not in the way strangers sometimes look like someone you knew, but in a deeper way, like seeing a photograph you have stared at for years and suddenly watching it step into motion. The traveler's mouth opened slightly as if to speak, but no sound came. The older man smiled gently, as if the moment required no urgency. "Hello," the older man said. His voice was calm, warm, and steady. The trav swallowed. "Hello," he managed. The older man took a slow step forward, not invading space, just closing the distance enough for the lantern light to reach them both. "You've grown," the older man said, as if speaking to someone he knew well. The traveler felt his hands go slightly cold. He had heard those words in different forms before. In family gatherings, in old conversations, in memories. Yet hearing them now felt like something burning quietly inside him. He began, then paused. The older man's eyes softened. "It's all right," the older man said. "There's no need to hurry." The traveler looked at the man's face again. The shape of his nose, the slight curve of his smile, the steady calm in his gaze. He had seen that gaze in his grandmother's eyes sometimes. When she looked at old photographs, when she stared into the distance with a quiet warmth on her face. His voice came out in a whisper, almost without permission. "Grandpapa?" The older man's smile deepened just a little. "Yes," he said simply. The traveler stood still, letting the words settle. "Grandpa." He had not said that word out loud in years. Not seriously. Not directly. It had always felt like a title for someone who was absent. Someone who longed to a story that stopped halfway. And now, the person stood in front of him, calm, real under a lantern. The older man tilted his head slightly. "You look tired," he said gently. "It's been a long road." The traveler exhaled, slow and shaky. I didn't know you were here." The older man nodded as if that made sense. "Most people don't," he said. The traveler wanted to ask questions. 1,000 questions. Where have you been? Why did you leave? Why didn't you come back? Did you know how much she missed you? Did you know how often she spoke of you? Did you know how the family learned to carry your absence quietly? But the older Khan's calm presence made the questions too sharp, too fast. So, the traveler, something simpler. "Is this your village?" he said, looking around at the warm windows, the soft fog, the quiet stone street. The older man followed his gaze. "This is a place," he said, "where people come when they need quiet." The traveler nodded slowly, as if that was enough. He could feel the forest behind him, like closed door. He could feel the road and the fallen branch like a different life. Paused in the distance, the older man gestured gently toward the small inn. "Come," he said. "Let's sit somewhere warm." They followed. The inn's door opened easily. Warm air drifted out, smelling of tea, wood smoke, and something faintly sweet like cinnamon or baked apples. Inside was soft, amber, and steady. A small fireplace crackled quietly in the corner, its sound like slow breathing. The room was not crowded. A few tables, a few chairs, a long wooden counter, a kettle steaming gently. A woman behind the counter looked up and smiled without surprise, as if she knew the traveler would arrive. Her smile was kind, unhurried. The older man guided the traveler table near the fire. They sat. The chair was warm, as if someone had sat there recently. The wooden table was smooth and worn, touched by many quiet evenings. The traveler's hands rested on the table. He looked the older man across from him, still trying to place him fully into reality. The older man sat comfortably, his shoulders relaxed, his eyes steady. For a few moments, neither spoke. The fire filled the silence gently. The traveler found, to his surprise, that he didn't feel urgent anymore. He didn't feel like he needed to force answers out of the night. The presence of his grandfather, real or not, explained or not, was already something his mind was adjusting to, like a slow, warm blanket. The woman brought 2 cups of tea. The tea smelled of and honey. She set the cups down with quiet care and then left without asking questions. The older man wrapped his hands around the cup, letting the warmth rise. The traveler did the same. The first sip was soothing, not too hot, not too sweet, just warm enough to make his chest soften. The older man looked at him over the rim of his cup. "You've become a good man," he said quietly. The travelers tightened again. "You don't know that," he said. But his voice wasn't defensive. It was simply uncertain. The older man's eyes held a gentle certainty. "I can say it," he said. The traveler looked down at his cup, watching a small swirl of steam rise and vanish. He swallowed. Then he said, carefully, "Grandma talks about you." The older man did not flinch. He did not look away. He simply nodded, as if the statement was something he had been holding gently for a long time. "Does she?" The older man said softly. "Yes," the traveler said. "Not all the time, but often, in small ways." He paused, choosing his words. "She'll say something like, 'He used to do that,' or 'He would have laughed at that.' Or she'll look at the window when the sun is low and say, 'She misses the way you used to watch the evening.'" The older man's gaze drifted briefly toward the fireplace, toward the orange glow. A small, quiet smile appeared. He spoke as if he were remembering the warmth of a room, not the pain of leaving it. "The evening light," he said. "Yes, she always noticed it first." The traveler felt the story opening slowly, like a door that'd been closed for years, but never locked. He slow breath. "Why did you leave?" he asked, not accusing, not demanding, just asking softly. The older man's eyes returned to him. For a moment, the older man's face was thoughtful. Then he said, "Sometimes people leave because they believe they must. And sometimes the world becomes complicated, even when the heart remains simple." The traveler listened, not pushing. The older man continued, voice calm. Someone describing a landscape rather than a conflict. "I loved her," he said. "That never changed." The traveler's chest warmed at the words. He whispered, "She loved you too." The older man's hand tightened slightly around the cup, then relaxed. "I know," he said softly. They sat for a while. Tea steamed. Fire crackled. Outside, fog drifted slowly past the windows. Then, older man back slightly and asked, as if the question mattered more than anything else, "How is she?" The traveler's voice softened immediately. She's strong," he said. "She smiles a lot, even when she's tired. She still makes tea like it's the most important thing in the world." The older man's smile returned. "She always made tea like that," he said. The traveler nodded. "And she tells stories," he added, "about the past, about you, about how you two met. Sometimes she tells them like she's remembering a movie, sometimes like she's reading from a book." The older man's eyes brightened with quiet interest. "What does she say about how we met?" he asked. The traveler hesitated, then smiled a little. "She says she was walking home," he said, and she saw you on the bridge by the river." The older man chuckled softly, a sound as gentle as the fire. "The bridge," he said. "Yes." The traveler, his grandfather's face, as if he were watching a long-lost photograph become alive, each expression adding a new layer of truth. "She says you were carrying something," the traveler continued. "A bundle of, I think she said wood or tools. And you stopped because you saw her, and we pretended you were looking at the river, but we were just trying an excuse to talk to her." The older man laughed again, quiet and warm. "That sounds like me," he admitted. The traveler's shoulders relaxed for the first time in what felt like days. Had begun, and gently, slowly, like a lantern carried through fog, the older man set his cup down carefully. He looked at the traveler with calm seriousness, not heavy, just sincere. "Would you like to hear it from me?" he asked. The heart softened. "Yes," he said, and the older man began to speak. He spoke in a slow, steady rhythm, the way someone speaks when they want the listener to feel safe. He described the river in the village where he grew up, the way the water looked in the evening, the way the air smelled when spring arrived, the way the bridge creaked slightly underfoot. He described how he had been young then, younger than the traveler could easily imagine, full of simple hopes. He described how he had seen the grandmother young and bright, walking with a small bag in her hand, her hair catching the light, her eyes focused forward as if she were heading toward a future she hadn't named yet. He described how his chest had tightened at the sight, not with fear, but with that strange, immediate knowing that some people bring into your life. And as he spoke, traveler listened. Quiet. The fire remained gentle. The village outside remained calm, and the night held them both, as if there was nowhere else they needed to be. The older man leaned back slightly, as if allowing the memory to settle more comfortably around him. The fire reflected softly in his eyes, and for a moment it seemed as though the village itself was listening. "When I first saw her," he began, "I didn't think in words. I didn't think in plans. I only felt still." He paused, letting the word rest. "Everything else kept moving," continued. "The water under the bridge, the leaves above us, the sounds of footsteps somewhere behind me. But inside, something stopped, as if the worldly lightly asked me to pay attention." The traveler sat forward slightly, elbows resting on the table, his hands loosely folded. He didn't want to interrupt. He didn't want to hurry the moment. She was walking home. The older man said, "She always walked that way in the evenings. The sun was low, and the light rested like a soft veil. I remember thinking that if I didn't speak to her then, I might never forgive myself for it." The older man smiled at the memory, a smile that carried no regret. "So I pretended I was interested in the river," he said. "I leaned on the railing, looked down at the water and waited. When she came to turned and said something very ordinary. I don't even remember what it was. Probably something at the weather, or way the light looked." The traveler smiled faintly. "That sounds like you," he said. The older nodded. "She stopped," he continued. She listened, and then she smiled. Not politely, not quickly. She smiled like she was deciding whether the moment was worth keeping. He lifted his cup again, took a slow sip, then set it down. "We talked for a long time," he said. "Not about anything important. About where we lived. About the bridge. About nothing at all. But it felt important because it was shared." The fire shifted softly. Outside, a lantern flickered once, then steadied. She laughed. The older man said quietly, "I remember very clearly. Not loud laughter, just a small sound, like she had been surprised by something pleasant." The traveler felt warmth spread in his chest. "She still laughs like that," he said. "When she remembers something she didn't expect to remember." The older eyes softened. "I'm glad," he said. They sat with that for a moment, allowing the memory to breathe. "We met again the next evening," the older man continued. "And the evening after that. Sometimes on the bridge, sometimes by the riverbank, sometimes just walking together without a destination." He looked toward the window, where fog moved slowly past the glass. "We didn't rush," he said. "There was no need. Time felt wide then, like something that belonged to us." The traveler imagined it easily. The quiet walks, the slow conversations, the shared silences. It felt familiar, even though it wasn't his memory. "She taught me how to notice small things," the older man said. "The way the air changes before rain, the sound of footsteps behind you when someone you love is near, the comfort of sitting together without speaking." The traveler swallowed gently. "She still notices things like that," he said. "She'll stop in the middle of a sentence just to listen to the wind." The older smiled. "That doesn't surprise me." He paused, then added softly, "She made the world feel kind." The traveler looked down at the table, tracing a small mark in the wood with his finger. "She always, you were kind," he said. The older man did not respond immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. "I tried to be," he said. They sat quietly again. The inn warm, the tea slowly. Outside, the village held its breath in a gentle way. "We built a life," the older man continued after a while. "Not a grand one, a simple one. Mornings with light through the window, evenings with shared meals, days that felt ordinary, and because of that, precious." The traveler listened intently. "She tells stories about those days," he said. "About mornings, about how you used to wake up before her and make tea." The older man laughed softly. "She never liked waking up early," he said. "But she liked waking up to warmth." The traveler smiled. "She still does," he said. The older man nodded slowly. They spoke for a long time after that. Not all at once. Sometimes the older man spoke. Sometimes the traveler did. Sometimes neither of them said anything, and the silence felt part of the conversation. The traveler told his grandfather about the house as it was now, about the garden, about the chair by the window, about the way his grandmother folded blankets carefully, even when no one was watching. The older man, as if every detail mattered. At one point, he closed his eyes briefly, as if seeing the house clearly in his mind. She keeps everything just as it was, the traveler said quietly. The older man opened his eyes. Yes, he said. She always had a strong memory for places. The traveler hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" The question hovered between them, gentle but meaningful. The older man considered it carefully. Then he said, "Some paths don't lead backward. But that doesn't mean love doesn't travel." The traveler nodded, even though he didn't fully understand. The older man reached across the table and rested his hand lightly near the traveler's, not touching, just close enough to be felt. "Tell her," he said softly. "Tell her what?" the traveler asked. The older man's was calm, unwavering. "Tell her that I remember," he said. "Tell her that I never stopped loving her. And tell her that I am waiting." The traveler's throat tightened. "Waiting?" he echoed. "Yes," the older man said. "As long as it takes." The words did not feel heavy. They felt peaceful. The traveler felt something settle inside him, something that had been restless for a long time. The fire, softly, the village seemed to grow quieter, as if night were deepening. The traveler stood as well. Instinctively, they walked together toward the door of the inn. Outside, the fog had thickened slightly, wrapping the lanterns in soft halos. The village looked even calmer now, as if preparing for rest. They stopped near the edge of the square. The older man turned to the traveler. "You should go," he said gently. The traveler nodded, though he felt no urgency. "I will," he said. The older man, him with quiet pride. "She raised you well," he said. The traveler smiled faintly. "She always says she wasn't alone," he replied. The older man's eyes glistened softly in the lantern light. "Good," he said. They briefly, tightly, just enough. Then the older man stepped back. The traveler turned toward the path that led back into the forest. As he took his first step, the lantern light seemed to dim slightly. The fog grew thicker. The village softened at the edges. He continued walking. The path felt familiar now, even though he had only walked it once before. His steps were slow, his breathing steady. The forest welcomed him quietly. Then his eyes, light filtered through a window, more light, soft and pale. He lay still for a moment, the feeling of warmth still wrapped around him like a memory that had not yet faded. His heart felt full, calmed. He knew, without question, that he had been dreaming, and yet the dream felt more solid than many waking moments he could remember. Sat up slowly. The room was quiet. He dressed without hurry and walked down the hall. In the kitchen, his grandmother sat at the table, a cup of tea gently in front of her. She looked up when she saw him. "Good morning," she said. He smiled. "Good morning," he replied. He sat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he began to tell her about the dream. He told her about the road, the forest, the village. He told her about meeting someone he hadn't seen in a long time. As he spoke, he noticed her hands still. Her eye remained on his face. He told her about the bridge, about the river, about the way evening light rested on the water. He told her things he'd not know how he knew. Small details, quiet habits, words that had never been spoken aloud in his presence. Tears formed in her eyes, not sadness, of recognition. When he finished, she reached across the table and took his hands in hers, her grip and steady. She smiled, her tears. "He will wait for me," she said softly. "I have never been disappointed in him, and I still love him." They sat together in the quiet kitchen, hands joined, the morning light resting gently around them, and felt calm.